Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. My name is Jack Osa. I'm an architect, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Years ago, I migrated to the United States to follow my dreams. And today, I'm the founder and principal of Osa Studio, a multidisciplinary architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. In this podcast, we talk about design, business, creativity, and the inspiration we need to create an exciting and powerful built environment. In this episode of the Power of Design podcast, I had a great conversation with Tripp Guin. Tripp is the founder and managing partner of Tripp Commercial, a commercial real estate company focused on tenant representation, brokerage, and corporate services in Charlotte, North Carolina. During our conversation, we talk about entrepreneurship, how to get good at what you do, and an amazing story about networking and relationships. Hey Tripp, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Tripp, you are an entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience in the commercial real estate industry. You have also been recognized as a top producer, generating millions of dollars in transactions. What do you think is the single most important skill a successful real estate professional should master today?
That's a great question because there are so many skills. I think the one all-encompassing skill would be time management. For me, it's being able to juggle just all the things that brokers have to do. We eat what we kill, and we always are hunting, but you don't take care of your clients first, then you're not going to close anything.
Sure.
So, they're both important, finding clients and helping them close the transactions. And the best way to be able to do both is to be able to manage your time.
Yeah.
You have to approach clients during the business hours, and you have to help the clients during business hours. So it's figuring out how to not get caught up doing one or the other is probably the biggest key to being a successful broker, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's interesting because, time is one of those things that we all have the same amount of time. And sometimes we see people that achieve a lot, a lot of things. They're involved in multiple things. And sometimes we are like, man, how did they do it? And I think the time management piece is big differentiator. And even more than that, I was reading the other day, I don't remember where they talk about it's not much about time management. It's more about priority management, because time is time. That's all what you have. But the way we're prioritizing what we're doing. So what are you going to do first? What are you going to do next? What are you doing in the morning? What are you doing in the afternoon? I've noticed that part of priority management is like in the morning, when after we wake up, our brain is fresh, it was relaxed, doing tasks that are more about, being creative, strategy, because as the day goes by, your energy levels start going down, and you need to match your task to the energy level you have during the day. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tripp, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up?
I was born here in Charlotte, one of the few, proud, and grew up just over the river in Gaston County in a little town called Mount Holly.
Wow.
My family had been over in Gaston or Cleveland County for a couple hundred years in the textile industry. I'm the first person first male in my family not to go into textiles.
Wow,
for
that's
a long
interesting.
time. And NAFTA came out in 1990, the year I graduated. And my family was like, unless you want to move out of the country, you probably need to find a different industry. And I stumbled around and figured out what I was going to do. But it was interesting growing up over there and being from here. And I left and probably really wasn't going to come back. And then Charlotte just started blowing up and in a good way. And came back. I was at the College of Charleston and just came back up the road. It turns out I met my wife and and she came here with me, and she was here too, but we came back here together and started kind of about 25 years ago back
Nice.
here.
So what was your first job here in Charlotte?
In Charlotte, I worked for Modern Office Machines, selling copiers, Canon copiers. So I met a guy in Charleston. I was working at Circuit City, if y'all remember that place.
Oh, yeah.
And sold a guy a radio, and he liked me and wanted to hire me for either Hilton Head or or Charlotte. And I came to work here in Charlotte because I grew up here, and I ended up covering Gaston and Cleveland County where I grew up, and just learned how to cold call and network and do all those hardcore things back then for copier sales, which it's a great introduction for a career in sales. Yeah.
Sure. So tell me about the experience, your first days getting into sales.
It was interesting. Didn't know how to dress right when I walked in, and didn't wear the right shirt. And, we didn't have computers back then. We were just starting to get computers, but we had the Rolodex thing where you'd have the month set up and you'd have to go through a Rolodex to make the calls, and, maybe you had a bag phone if you were lucky. So it was interesting being out, outside sales in a market when way back then, and, just knocking on doors and asking people about their copiers. So, but it was cool because I grew up there, and I might have an in with people because I knew somebody from growing up there. And so I did all right at it. I wasn't great at it, but built a lot of good relationships and still keep in touch with a lot of those folks to this day.
Sure. I think that's a great experience for, anybody who's started their career, because sales is the most important skill you can have, regardless of your industry. If you know how to sell and you learn early, you're going to be, way ahead.
Yep. Everybody's in sales.
Yeah. And it's hard, because we get this idea from, media, could be movies, where a salesperson is somebody who's trying to, take advantage of you or something. Or, but when you really understand that, if you're genuine, you believe in what you're selling, you're trying to help people.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So once you go through that job, selling copiers, what was the next step for you?
I got a call from a headhunter wanting to try to place me in a company, and I went and interviewed, and they ended up hiring me to be their VP of sales instead. And it was a staffing company in Charlotte, and I covered all of Mecklenburg County, so that kind of opened me up to a little more of an area where I was able to literally call on every company in town, and led from that to I started calling every company, and one of those companies was a company called Office Environments. And I called on the manager. We were meeting to try to place salespeople and administrative support in the company. And the day I ended up having lunch with her, some things had gone on where I was kind of considering leaving. And she said, well, hey, what about furniture? And my father-in-law was a rep for Lane, which is, he was a top producer for them in the Carolinas, which is the great place to be a rep for furniture because of Hickory. Yeah, and all the furniture up there, the merchandise mart in High Point. But ended up going into that and started really networking to do office furniture with design firms and real estate brokers and all that kind of stuff.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So you were focused on your sales, experience and training. What did you find attractive about the world of furniture design? I guess that was opening a new horizon for you.
So when I was in staffing for a year and a half or so ever, I found that the companies that didn't need to hire as many people and kept more people were the firms that really put a lot into their space and their design. Yeah. And when you could tell when you walked in, people were proud to be in a location, and they were excited to be a part of an organization. I found that there was a correlation with staffing and employee in companies. Interesting. And so one of the reasons I was drawn to Office Environments is they were a part of building that design within the company. So it's not just the walls and how things are put together, but how the furniture populates it. And so I thought that could be a way that I could participate in that part of making people happy, being at companies, proud to go where they work. And so I looked for companies to work with that cared about their space and how they use their space and wanted to keep their people. And so I was pretty proud to be at OE at that time. It was a Steelcase dealer, and Steelcase was a phenomenal manufacturer, and they flew us up to Michigan, and you got to go to Neocon, which is a trade show for that industry, and it just really opened my eyes to being beyond Charlotte. So it was very cool, but to see the kinds of companies that were successful and had good people that didn't want to leave were the ones that focused on design and furniture and all that. So it was awesome to be a part of that industry at that time. Yeah.
No, so that's good to hear, because when I started the podcast, I call it the power of design, the intersection of design, construction, and real estate.
Yep.
Because when we all participate in creating the built environment, like a design firm, you create the design, the concepts, drawings, but then you stop. There is a point that you can't execute. You need to give it to a different team who's going to build it.
Yep.
And everything originates from a transaction. Like somebody needs to pay for all this. Money needs to come from somewhere. So the banker, the broker, the project manager are as integral part of creating the built environment as everybody else. And part of what I'm trying to do with the podcast and with my company is to help people understand, you're also a designer. You're part of helping the design.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people confuse design with artistic expression, and it's not. You don't really have to. Design is a process. Design is a way to solve problems. So some people use numbers or contracts, and they design those things to create a optimal outcome, to create a space where everybody will enjoy.
Yep. So I fell in love with that industry and how it connected, and I was involved with IIDA and AIA and all these other groups, and then got to know real estate brokers, and wanted to get in that business. I saw I'd be delivering the furniture, ready to install it, and I'd see these real estate guys leaving with their golf clubs in their trunk to go play golf, and I'm like, I want to be that guy.
That's right.
And so it was hard to get in, though. It was hard barrier of entry. I was probably 30 when I was interested in it. So what I do is I typically get to a point, and then I get up above where I've been, and I kind of see a new level. I'm like, I want to do this. So I raise myself up every time. And when I got into that, I said, well, I can't get into real estate right now. So I got my license, and I started my own company called Referral Resource, where I was a vendor's agent, basically hunting deals just like I had done for furniture, but I did it for all the vendors that sell design firms, architects, contractors, moving companies, et cetera.
Yeah.
And they paid me retainer to hunt deals. And in doing that, for 2 years, I started finding deals before brokers were involved.
Wow.
So I had my license at that point. I started referring deals to companies like Trammell Crow, where I ended up getting hired because I referred them a 20,000 square foot office deal. And they're like, these don't just get referred and pop up out of nowhere. And so I got a nice referral fee for that from my partner at the time, or my future partner. And they ended up bringing me in to Trammell Crow, which is one of the most prolific developers in history. Right. And so I loved that company. And then CBRE acquired Trammell, so we folded into CBRE. So that's how I got into commercial real estate, and had a lot of success early, got fortunate with some awards, and ended up having a great partnership and learned a lot from my 3 senior partners. They just took me under their wing and really had to polish me up a lot, and I still probably need a lot of polishing, actually. But,
that's awesome. So what do you think is that that thing you have in you to make you, go to the next level, trying something different, make you good at sales and trying other things? What's that engine that you have in there?
When I was in junior high, I was at a private school in Gastonia called Gaston Day, and I loved basketball, but I was horrific at it. I was like 5'5" or something, and they had 18 players on the team, and they didn't cut. So I was able to play, and they would put in the bomb squad with 20 seconds to go, and we get to play if we were getting killed or if we were way ahead. And it kind of drove me. I wanted to be better, and I ended up playing college basketball after starting like that. So I think that drive that put some drive in me to be competitive. Yeah. And so that competitive nature, I just didn't necessarily learn things. Grew up in Mount Holly, I saw certain things, but a lot of things you didn't see, like banking, for example. I didn't know that there were investment bankers back then. I didn't know. I thought bankers were the tellers at the retail branches. I didn't know there were mergers and acquisitions and all those kind of things. So, you learn things as you go, and you grow into things, and you say, I think I could do that. And I got very fortunate to land in commercial real estate with such a great company and partners. But I think I answered your question. But yeah, it's been a learning experience. But the drive, I think, came from that. Mm-hmm. And I found a lot of times athletes do well in brokerage and sales because of that competitive instinct. Yeah. And I was told I couldn't play Division I, and so I ended up getting a scholarship to a junior college. I took it because that gave me the chance to hone my skills better, and I ended up getting a preferred walk-on spot at the College of Charleston, which is a Division I program. And nice. Played there, and then met my wife and decided not to play anymore because I met her. And, but good times,
That's awesome. So you're at CBRE, gaining experience, happy, making things happen. What made you take the decision of having your own company?
I'd always wanted to do that. Some of my partners had left the firm. A few other people had left the firm. There were some transitions happening. I wasn't sure it was the best fit. They weren't sure it was the best fit. At the time, I was more of a shotgun approach, if you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. I would chase everything.
Yeah.
And they liked more the rifle approach,
yeah,
which is you target things. So when I started my own company, I decided I wanted to do both. So I just decided I would work more hours than most people. So I would do the shotgun approach just as a safety net to make sure I'd always have some business coming in. Mm-hmm. And then I would do the rifle approach to make sure I'd have good corporate accounts where I could work on things over and over, repeat business.
Yeah.
So I at the time, I was part of a partnership, and we split everything, and then the house split everything. And so by being on my own, the house split became me, even though I had to cover all my expenses. But I could do half the revenue I was doing and make double the money.
Right.
So it just made sense to switch, because I was going to make more even if I did less.
Sure.
I ended up doing the same, so I ended up doing 3 to 4 times better than I had been doing. And then, the first couple of years, I just kept all the money and lived and survived. And then I started thinking I wanted to grow, so I started interviewing and hired some brokers, and now I currently have 3 junior brokers working for me in Charlotte, and we just opened up an Atlanta office as well. So
that's awesome.
Very organic, very slow growth.
Yeah.
I like to train people. Typically, I like people that have not been in the business. It might be interesting to hire someone who's been a broker for a while, but I like to train people up and show them kind of what I like, and I let them find their own way as well. But I definitely am a person, if you know my personality, that is better doing my own thing.
Yeah.
So, it's a fit.
Yeah.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
So, it's the natural progression when any person starts a business. You're just doing your craft, doing your best for your client, working long hours. But business itself is a bigger story, marketing, operations, strategies, finances. At one point, do you start realizing that, hey, man, maybe I need to learn a little bit more about this? If I keep doing what I'm doing, might not take me to the goal that I have.
Yeah. I've always been someone that likes to learn, and unfortunately, I don't enjoy reading a lot. So I started doing the books on tape and things like that, and listening to try to hone my skills. I would take classes like Dale Carnegie, sales training. And as far as ownership, once I was an owner of a company, I tried to learn more. I actually was a communications major in college, going to be in television, sportscasting, et cetera, but got into sales. And so I knew at some point I needed to upgrade that. And so I ended up at 41 years old, got into South Carolina's Darla Moore School, and went back and got my MBA. So I had kids that were at home, and 3 girls and my wife, and I said, hey, I'm getting my MBA. And it's funny, my wife was like, sure, go do it, having no idea how much time was going to take. But it took me 20 months to do, and probably one of the best things I ever did. But that, along with things like SIOR, which is a designation for commercial real estate, that's been a lot of learning in that. I've created some groups. Like I created a global tenant rep group with Grant Pruitt from White Box in Dallas to start that group for SIOR, because they didn't have a group focused on tenant rep. I joined EO, which is the Entrepreneurs Organization here in Charlotte. It took me about 4 to 5 years to qualify, because they have a revenue production threshold. Sure. And so I figured, how do I do that? And it drove me to increase my revenue through hiring brokers, through working with brokers in other markets to get more revenue through my company. So all those things combined really helped me get in groups like that. And now those groups have taken me as far as Hong Kong and Warsaw for these conferences. And so it's really just everywhere you go, you meet people from different places, and that helps me grow. And that's probably the biggest thing moving forward is travel and just connections. And meeting more people.
Yeah, and you're also very involved with the local Corenet Chapter.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
So I was actually brought on that board kind of not the normal way. A person at Trammell Crow, my boss at the time, was supposed to be going into a meeting to be on the board. He says, "Hey, can you go to this meeting for me? I can't do it." And so I ended up going for him. We only had 6 board members at the time. I said, "Hey, Chip can't do it." He asked me to step in if you want me. And they're like, "Hey, what can you do?" And I told them, and they said, "Yeah, okay, that sounds good." So it was more of a, you can help, great, come on.
Yeah.
And so now that group has gone from like 80 members and like 10,000 in sponsorships to like, it was at one point 450 before the pandemic, and 150,000 in sponsorships. So it's grown significantly. During that time, we won Chapter of the Year for the small chapter, Chapter of the Year for the mid-sized chapter, and then 2-3 years ago, we won the Mega Chapter Award. Wow. So I've fortunately been around for almost 16 years on this board, probably my last year this year, just because I had rolled off, and then someone actually had to step away for pregnancy, and they said, "Hey, you've been here so long and you've done all this, can you step into her role?" Mm-hmm. So I came back on for 3 more years after being a senior advisor for 4 years. So I had done a lot of the things in the chapter I've done, but it's very proud to be a part of a group that went from begging people and asking people, "Hey, can you come to this?" Getting all your people to show up, to now we've got succession plans, and we've got people I've never even met before joining the board, and becoming these prolific members that are making things happen. Went to an event last night in Greensboro. Went to an event in Raleigh last week, and it's just to be a part of an organization that started at this point, that's grown to this point. It's kind of nice. And
sure.
I guess I'm still relatively young, so I'm hoping, down the road, maybe I can get more re-involved and help again after I roll off, maybe join the membership.
Yeah.
Help out with the committee to get new members on board.
Yeah, I joined Corenet about 4 months ago, in a short period of time. I met really cool people. You really feel embraced. Everybody, wants to help each other. It has a really good energy. And you don't see that from outside. When from an outsider perspective, I never thought that's what it was about. Now that I'm in it, I'm like, man, this is awesome. This is really cool, man.
It's a family.
Yeah, and you can see, and immediately I joined a committee, the diversity and inclusion. So I wanna help and connecting with people.
Tony Perez.
Yeah, yes, people like you, people like others that have been there for many years. See how can I add value, help, and eventually, grow my business through that network.
Absolutely, and you will. I currently lead university relations and young leaders, and we got some great events going. We got an academic challenge coming up where schools like South Carolina has made it to the finals in the past. Clemson, UNC Charlotte, College of Charleston, Chapel Hill have applied for this challenge in the past. Gives students a chance, if they get taken to the finals at the summit, they get flown and put up in a hotel at these summits. They get to access to all these decision makers in corporate real estate. So it's a phenomenal opportunity. And with the diversity committee, we're working with Tony and Lalana on reaching out to the historically black universities in the Carolinas to get them involved as well and show them this industry exists. So that's a big push right now, is diversity for sure. And I think we're definitely doing the right things to get there.
Yeah, I'm excited about
awesome.
Continuing working with the chapter. Tell me a little bit about the Entrepreneurs Organization. Mm-hmm. Why did you join, and what are you getting out of that?
So I joined. I got invited 4 or 5 years, probably 8 or 9 years ago now, 7 or 8 years ago, by a friend, and I went to this meeting at Ruth's Chris, and I just felt like the people in the room were just incredible entrepreneurs. Some of them I'd heard of. I was kind of excited to be in the room, and then found out that the revenue production was higher than where I was at. So it took me about 4 or 5 years. So part of me was driven to get to that next level just to prove I could, being a one-man shop at the time, and then grew it to be more. But I got in the group thinking it would help me personally and professionally grow the company. The company itself was doing well, but I wanted to scale it and get more brokers and go to other markets. And they talked about like EOS, which is a book called Entrepreneurial Operating System, things like that you can scale up. And so I got in the group, and really at the time, actually, it was more business that I got in for growing the company. But what you find is it's actually like little forums in the group, like boards of directors for your life, not just your business. And what I didn't understand was how much it could help with family, with kids, with all kinds of personal issues going on, but which we all have. And as entrepreneurs, a lot of people don't understand the payroll, the marketing, the finance that we talked about. And so neighbors who work for bigger firms like Bank of America, et cetera, they may or may not understand the 24-hour nature of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so this group, you're basically surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals who get it. And so these forums of about 8 or 9 people, you get together once a month and you talk about the good, the bad, the ugly in your life, in the personal side, the family side, and the business side. And it's confidential, and you talk about these things. And if there's something significant happening in your life, then you can do a deep dive and go into like a 40-minute presentation like the next month, unless it needs to be done sooner. And so it's been great, helping me in a lot of different ways I never expected. The most impactful thing immediately was learning what we call experience share. I usually am really good at mouthing off and giving advice.
Yeah.
And what I've learned in this group is when you hear somebody ask a question, you just share your experience. That way you're not telling them what to do. Entrepreneurs don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And so with an experience share, you can say, here's what I did when I had that problem. And then they can take from that what they find valuable and leave what they don't.
Nice. Yeah.
So then you're not pressuring them to take your advice and do it. They heard what you had to say, and then they'll use it if they can. So that's been incredible from just a growth perspective on how to deal with other people.
Yeah,
So
that's
exciting.
exciting. I wanna be there, and now I'm at
We'll
that
get you
place
there.
you were before. I
We'll get you
wanna
there.
up my revenue so I can get in there. But I consume all the free information they have, online. There are plenty of videos in the YouTube EOS channel. I watch all the videos, I read the book. So it's very,
there's
very exciting.
There's it's a revenue threshold of $1 million in revenue, gross revenue.
Yeah.
But there's also a group called the Accelerator Program.
Yep.
That's $250,000 revenue. So that takes basically, they almost educate people, how do you scale your company to get to $1 million? It's almost like a feeder system. And Brian Delaney, formerly of Skookum, heads that up. And he's an incredible guy, what he's done, both personally and professionally. So, I definitely think it's great for any entrepreneur to look into both Accelerator and DO.
Yeah. Tell me about your company today, Tripp Commercial.
Yeah.
What do you got? What services do you provide? What type of clients do you work with?
Yep. So we're a tenant representation firm. So the name Tripp Commercial actually wasn't the original name. It was going to be Atlantic Coast Commercial. And then there was a company that had a similar name, and I thought it might be a conflict. And one of my clients is a patent attorney. I'm actually representing him right now. And they said, oh, you'll get sued, but you'll probably be able to use the name. I said, well, I don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
And so I went to meet with an architect, and they said, well, we like you, and we're going to stick with you even though you're leaving the big shop because you're so persistent and you're so passionate for our business. And then I left that meeting and called my web developer and said, I just met with the architect. They're going to stick with me because I'm persistent and passionate. And they said, oh, well, let's incorporate persistence and passion in your website. That sounds good. So they did somewhere. I think they had patience too, and then or preparation. And then I was talking to my dad on the way to Raleigh to a Corenet event. And I said, this is what happened. I'm looking at my company, but there might be a conflict. And I told him about incorporating persistence and passion. He goes, well, why don't you call it Tripp Commercial and have it stand for what you do, which is tenant representation.
Yeah.
And why people hire you is you're persistent and you're passionate.
That's right.
So I said, well, you're an idiot. I'm not going to call it Tripp because no one calls their real estate company by their first name. It's always, whatever, and associates or whatever. And he said, well, you can always change it. And so I called it Tripp, all caps, for tenant representation, incorporating persistence and passion. And that's what it started as, an acronym for that. And I bought a backup name at the time called CoreRep, kind of a play off of Corenet. Stands for Commercial Real Estate Representatives.
Yeah. And
I kept it in the back pocket in case the name Tripp didn't take off or work. And the brokers who work for me say it's fine and everything's fine, so we've kept it. And to go on from that, though, I had a gentleman in Atlanta, one of my closest friends. We were going to open a Tripp office there, and he actually came to me and said, "Hey, what if it was my firm? What if I was the majority owner?" And we went from a different perspective. And so it's going to be a minority-owned business down there, and we decided to call it CoreRep.
Yep.
So that's going to be CoreRep. It's going to have commercial real estate representatives, and Eric's running that down there, and I'm just kind of helping out in the background, get things going, and until he hires some other brokers. I'm licensed in Georgia and New York as well as South Carolina and North Carolina. So we've got that going now as of a month ago. So I'm heading down there Monday and Tuesday.
That's exciting, man.
Yeah, it's good. And I'm using my Corenet connections and my EO connections and my SIOR connections in Atlanta to plug him in and help him get those relationships. So hopefully all that work will continue to pay off in Atlanta.
So who's an ideal client for you?
Office users is who I started with. I do a lot of industrial these days. Mm-hmm. The market's changed where industrial is hot right now.
Yep.
And so I do both. But any kind of a corporate client that has multiple locations, we'll do one-off transactions all day long. But we really pursue the corporate accounts and work with people in other markets. Currently, we're working in Hawaii, Seattle, Alaska, Texas, Minnesota, all up and down the East Coast with certain clients that we work with. So people who have office or industrial space are our core. We don't really do retail much, once in a blue moon. Occasionally we'll do that, but multifamily we really never have done. We don't do a lot of land other than clients looking to purchase to build something for themselves.
Yeah.
But we only work on the tenant side. We don't do listings unless it's for a corporate tenant. And we feel like that keeps us from having a conflict of interest that a lot of the bigger shops have. If you go to their 10Ks of the big firms, it says in there that they have a conflict of interest and that they could get sued because they can't force their employees to do things. So I always thought that was interesting. So I actually at one point bought a domain name I can't remember what it was called now. I've still got it, but it was Broker Conflicts of Interest, I think, or something .com. And I was going to put those 10Ks on there. And then somebody else said, yeah, you'll probably get sued. So I said, I'll hold off doing that. But no, it's been good.
So what would you say it's unique about Tripp Commercial? What's the unique differentiator your team brings to the marketplace?
Yeah, it's that conflict-free representation, I think, is the big pitch, and that we're tenant only. We only work on that side of the table, so we really, we don't have a conflict with beating up a landlord or trying to beat up a landlord. Whereas someone who's doing both sides, they might try to pitch that landlord to represent them. Mm-hmm. They may not be as tough on them because they want to earn their business on another building, whereas we're not trying to do that. So we're only looking out for our tenant interest. And we will do listings for those tenants if they buy a building that occupy half of it and they need to lease the other half. We will do that. Yeah. But we don't look at that as a conflict because we're still helping our corporate tenants. And we're not doing it for necessarily investors. Right. So I guess that answers that.
Yeah. And how do you make sure your team it's always having that tenant first in mind, and how do you transfer, your skills, your abilities, everything that you created at the beginning, but now you want to scale?
Yep.
How do you transfer that to others?
So, like I said, I only try to hire people I can train. I haven't got a lot of existing people who have brokerage experience. So I get to train them from the ground up. Now, for example, I like to make prospecting calls on the phone, but I don't force people to do that. If they feel like walking and knocking on doors is better, let them do it. If they want to send an email blast, that's fine. It's more about the time management tools, making sure they take care of the clients that they're working with first, and then put the prospecting second, but always have room for prospecting in there in some form or shape or way. So we sit in a boiler room environment where we're all out in the open. We got a new office condo we bought in the Tryon Plaza building downtown Charlotte, overlooking the corner of Trade and Tryon. And we get down there and we hear each other, what we're doing. They hear me, I hear them. We get on daily huddles with each other, talk about what we're going to be doing that day, how we had the day before. With COVID, that was very helpful to have that huddle call, a Zoom call, so that we could keep the culture going. Yeah.
How's technology impacting what you do?
Tremendously. A lot of the search engines are all, internet-based these days versus where you call the landlords and just ask what's available. You can go online. And so we just upgraded our system from regional to national. So now we can do transaction work wherever our clients need to go. We've got the network where we can all share our information like the bigger corporations have. It took us a while to get to that. the internet-based calls where we can take our phones wherever, and if we don't use our cell phones, we can take our phones and have it plug it in and use it when we're on vacation or somewhere else. So all those kind of things make it to where we can do things and look like we're bigger than we are necessarily. And we're part of a group called Access Global, which is a tenant rep group globally, and that's been helpful from a technology standpoint. The best practices, learning things from these other folks, how to do flyers, outsourcing our support. We learned that from a technology standpoint. Our admin is based in the Philippines. She's been with us about a little year and a half, and she's in law school, but she helps us out regularly. And then when she can't do it, she has support that helps her do things if she's out of pocket. They built our website for us. So having that technology to where we don't have to hire full-time people necessarily for administrative work has been very helpful. And then my IT support, for example, Bright Flow Technologies here in Charlotte, anything goes wrong, they're there. And they usually can hop on the computer. If it's broken, they'll take it out there. But they get on all the time. They'll upgrade our Outlook. They'll upgrade our computers. They watch for security purposes. I got hacked when I was in California two years ago, and I called them up, and they jumped on it and isolated the incident, stopped it in its tracks, and fixed it. So having that kind of ability to have people help, even though it's not necessarily part of our company, the technology for them to hop online. We use a database called ACT. Some people use Salesforce. ACT is very old, but they've upgraded to where they have internet-based, and their folks tech support can get online and update things and fix things. So having all that really kind of gives you all the things you had 10, 15 years ago at a larger company on site.
Yeah.
Now being small and nimble, we're able to do it all with the technology.
Yeah,
so
that's amazing. And,
it's a game
the
changer.
perception in the marketplace makes you look bigger and more robust.
There's not many brokers bigger than me physically. But no, as far as a company goes, you're right. It's helpful. And frankly, once you start doing those transactions for companies and getting those done, and you get the press releases, your work speaks for itself at that point. And I think we're at that point now where we've, I think, earned the respect of the market in what we do and what we have done, and hopefully what we will continue to do.
Yep.
So we'll see.
What would you say is the biggest challenge your clients are facing today?
Right now it's COVID, without question. So what we've tried to do is help people understand information as it comes out. So when we're calling existing clients, we're trying to share information about COVID and post-COVID occupancy. And then with prospects, we're doing that. So we try to bring value in the informational exchange. So some of the things, for example, Price Waterhouse had a great survey in June and January of last year and this year. Maybe they've redone it for this past July, where they talked about it to employers, employees all over the country, and got feedback about what their thoughts were of coming back. And so you saw a transition over those two surveys of where people's minds were, and over time how they thought they might get better, and what the thought process was of coming back. How much space would they need compared to what they used to have, things like that. So I would share that with my clients. I had one real estate director of a major company here in Charlotte, a Fortune 500, tell me he had met with his CFO 3 times and had that document with him each of those times when they were talking about strategy. Another one, Microsoft has a hybrid work trend. So I'm sharing that. I met someone last night at the baseball game. I'm sharing that with her about hybrid work and how to deal with people coming back in this environment. So that kind of information has been extremely helpful in helping those clients deal with probably the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues they'll ever deal with.
Sure.
It's a very separative environment right now. A lot of opinions on many sides of how this is going. And from a work experience, though, I think people getting back together, we're a herd community. We all want to be together. And I think individuals are great. It's the herd that gets some crazy things going. But from an individual perspective, I think getting back to the office will help a lot of people. And, some it doesn't work for them, and that's fine. I think that hybrid mentality will allow people like that to work remotely and allow other people who want to come back. And then there'll be a mix of people who come back 2-3 days a week.
Sure.
So I think it's going to work out real well. It's the biggest, big things like this happening are the big change agents. So it's going to be nice to see what comes from all this.
Yeah, I think things are going to go back to to a state very similar to what we had before. We're just in a time that there is a lot of uncertainty and people get, scared. We don't want to make big moves or big decisions. But I think eventually, the office exists for a reason. We need to be together. Collaboration is important. Technology is going to allow a certain amount of flexibility, but I think it's going to be a minority of people who's going to opt for that, virtual presence or, and it also generational, people joining the workforce right now. If they start virtual or not going to the office, they might get used to it easily.
Hard to build culture though when you're not together.
Yeah. I think we really appreciate once you experience it. That's when you really appreciate what's important about that. Yeah, cool. Well, Tripp, thank you so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate.
That's great.
You coming here. I really admire you for what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to get to know you better and
likewise
help each other.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this content. And find us online at thepowerofdesignpodcast.com. I invite you to join my mission to become a better version of yourself through the power of design.